Nowadays, Android doesn't need ports anymore because games are already launching automatically on every platform, including Android. But of course, a lot of older games are still getting their own mobile ports, and that's exactly the kind of port we're going to talk about today, so leave a like and come with me. YouTuber's Life 3 is basically a life simulator where your goal is to grow as a YouTuber. But unlike the previous games, this version puts you into a much harder and more realistic lifestyle. The biggest difference in this new version is that it focuses way more on the online and multiplayer side of being a streamer or influencer. One of the coolest things is all the new features you can do inside the game now, like making collabs with other players, joining online events, competing in global rankings, signing deals with brands, and building gigantic gaming setups. At the same time, the game also adds a lot of life simulation elements. It's definitely one of those games where once you start playing you just can't stop anymore. Wonderboy, The Dragon's Trap was honestly one of the hardest games I've played recently, and the only reason I didn't throw my phone at the wall is because I would have had to buy another one afterward. This is a 2D platformer that, from what I researched, is actually a really old game, but now it has this beautiful remastered version. You play as a character who has just defeated the dragon boss, but right before dying, the boss curses him and transforms him into a dragon too. And now the whole journey becomes about trying to reverse that curse and fix everything. This is one of those brutal 2D games where basically everything wants to kill you. If you miss a jump, you die. If you hit an enemy and aren't fast enough, you die. The game is constantly trying to punish every mistake you make. Tomb Raider is exactly the kind of port we're always looking for, an older classic game finally being brought over to mobile, and for the younger audience, this is basically the original Tomb Raider from the PlayStation 1 era. Released around 1999, 2000 and 2001, these games delivered a really interesting adventure experience. MEG'S. Of course, you have to remember that for its time, this game was absolutely incredible. Even with the remastered version that recently arrived on Android, the game is still really difficult and has mechanics that can feel pretty complicated on touch controls today. But honestly, a lot of old school games could work really well in this style on mobile too. And Tomb Raider is definitely one of those games that deserves it. TOILED 8 is kind of a parody of another famous game that's also on Android called the Exit 8. Both games follow the same idea where you're trapped inside a time loop, but in TOILED 8, the entire experience happens inside a bathroom. The whole point of the game is that everything keeps repeating itself and you need to spot the anomalies happening around you in order to escape the loop. So sometimes you'll see a character walking by, but the next time they move a little differently, or maybe a painting suddenly changes and little by little you start noticing exactly what's wrong in each loop. If you enjoy puzzle games or even horror games, this is actually a really good option. Sierra and the Stars Revival is a very interesting indie game because it mixes management mechanics, visual novel elements, and a really good story. The main idea of the game is very different from traditional YouTuber simulators. You play as Sierra, a new Nextuber trying to revive a virtual world called Cyber World which basically collapsed after the disappearance of a legendary streamer named Spica. It's a game where you work to restore energy to the world, do live streams, gain fans, and dive deep into the whole VTuber universe. And honestly, I don't even know how popular this game really is, but it genuinely looks extremely well made and also really cute at the same time. It's been a while since Subnautica launched on Android, but a lot of people also didn't follow the more recent release of Subnautica Below Zero. Unlike the first game, this one feels much more focused on adventure. The original Subnautica was mainly a survival game where you had to stay alive after crashing on a completely unknown planet. This one still follows almost the same idea, but now there's a much stronger focus on actually finishing the game and progressing through the story. And of course, that completely changes the experience. If you don't enjoy the slower pace of survival games like Subnautica, where you need to spend hours grinding resources, then Subnautica Below Zero is definitely the game you're looking for. Maybe one of the best mobile ports released in 2026 is definitely this one, and of course we have to talk about Sea of Stars. Sea Sea of Stars feels like the kind of game that came straight out of the golden age of the Super Nintendo, but with insanely modern quality. It was developed by Sabotage Studio, the same creators behind The Messenger. The game is a classic turn-based RPG heavily inspired by older games, but with a really cool modern touch. You play with two completely different protagonists. One is a child of the sun and the other is a child of the moon. Together they are known as the Children of the Solstice, Mundupat-Nuba, and their mission is to stop the creatures created by an evil alchemist called the Fleshman. Sir, if you enjoy RPGs, then honestly this game is basically unavoidable. Another RPG that came through a port, but this one also didn't get much attention. Now let's talk about Sea Fantasy, a game where your main goal is basically fishing. And I already want to talk about how absurdly cool this game looks. The pixel art world is beautiful. There's an open world for you to explore. It plays like an action RPG and somehow almost nobody knows about it. What really makes the game feel different is the idea of saving the world through fishing, but not the relaxing, cozy game type of fishing. You find giant sea creatures in the ocean, throw your fishing rod, and then the game turns into this action and timing mechanic where you need to reduce the creature's HP. Before finally capturing it, it's honestly a really unique RPG, and of course if you enjoy this kind of game, it's definitely worth checking out. Radiant Guardians. Light actually isn't a port. It launched on June 30th for basically every platform at the same time, but unfortunately it ended up being pretty overlooked. The game gives you two main characters to choose from, a girl focused more on long-range combat and a boy who fights more in close-range melee combat. The gameplay feels a lot like a beat-em-up, but with RPG-style character progression mixed into it. One thing I really like is that the game doesn't constantly force objectives onto you. You actually have a good amount of freedom to decide where you want to go and what you want to do, and on top of that, the combat feels really satisfying when you're fighting enemies. Even though the game didn't become very popular, I still think it's absolutely worth trying out. One of the games with the coolest and most unique mechanics on this list, and now let's talk about Pepper Grinder. You play as Pepper, a pirate girl who survives a shipwreck and has all of her treasure stolen by the Gnarlings. The only thing she still has left is her giant drill weapon called Grinder, and this drill is definitely the main focus of the game. You use it to move around the map and also to defeat enemies. There are some yellow surfaces where you can move normally, but most walls and terrain can actually be destroyed or crossed using the drill itself. Visually, the game also grabs a lot of attention. The pixel art graphics are super colorful and the animations have this really cool modern arcade vibe. I honestly don't even know if NETERNESS to EVERNESS is a PC game that got released on mobile or a mobile game that ended up launching on PC too. This is the famous anime GTA, as a lot of people call it, but in reality it's more like a huge anime RPG. So imagine something like Genshin Impact but set inside a massive modern city inspired by Japan, with total freedom for you to explore wherever you want. That's basically what this game is. Everything in the game seems to work really well, especially on mobile. The combat feels smooth and the open world is huge, letting you drive cars, motorcycles, and pretty much anything else you can find. But even with all that freedom, the game still focuses heavily on its RPG elements and story mode.
According to Article 20 of the Field Operations Code,
I've got something urgent myself.
Usually I'm not really into this style of game, but this is still a pretty interesting port and I think it's worth talking about here. Let's talk about Merchant of the Skies. Merchant of the Skies is one of those indie games that looks super simple at first, but becomes really addictive once you understand its gameplay loop. To explain it quickly, the game is basically about management, trading, exploration, and a bunch of other things mixed together. You control a small flying airship and start as a poor merchant trying to make money while traveling between floating islands. You need to sell your items, buy goods at cheaper prices, open new trade routes, and at the same time keep upgrading and expanding your own island. MEG'S Monster might look simple at first, but it actually has a very emotional story behind it, and it's another game that unfortunately didn't get much attention when it launched. The game has a really different concept where you start playing as a character who is basically invincible. He's the strongest monster in the entire monster kingdom, and as you can see, pretty much nothing can kill him. But despite being so powerful, his real mission is protecting little Meg. And the biggest challenge in the game is making sure Meg never cries, because if that happens, oh, you lose the game. As the story goes on, you start to understand exactly why Meg ended up in the monster world, and a lot of people say the game's story is incredibly emotional. We recently got a trailer for a movie based on this game, and honestly, I personally think it looks really bad. Let's talk about Iron Lung. Inside the game's universe, humanity has basically already collapsed. You play as a character who might be humanity's last hope, trapped inside a completely broken down submarine. The windows are sealed shut, you can barely see anything outside, and most of the submarine systems barely even work anymore. The entire focus of the game is survival, and unlike a lot of other horror games, this one doesn't rely heavily on jump scares. Instead, the horror comes from things like isolation, claustrophobia, and the constant feeling that something terrifying might be waiting for you in the darkness. Looking at Encounter the Lost Cards, it might seem like a pretty simple game, but I honestly think this is extremely addictive, mostly because of its gameplay. This is a roguelike that also works as an RPG and even a card game, all combined into one single game. Instead of exploring a traditional map like most roguelikes, your entire journey happens through cards. Every card represents something different, an event, an enemy, a blessing, or even a curse that can affect your character. And another thing worth mentioning is that the game doesn't really have one fixed story for you to follow, because every card can push your adventure in a completely different direction, which means your journey might end in a totally unexpected way every single time you play. Easy Delivery Company is honestly amazing because it mixes management mechanics with horror elements, and sincerely, it's one of the best games on this list. The main idea of the game is actually pretty simple. You play as some kind of delivery driver and you travel around with your little vehicle like you're seeing right now, going through different locations while delivering letters, pizzas, and all kinds of things to NPCs. The management side of the game is really fun because you can upgrade your character, improve your vehicle, and enhance different aspects of your journey. And of course, there's also the horror side of things. Weird characters, mountains that almost seem alive, and this strange atmosphere that makes the game feel unique enough that you probably won't get tired of it anytime soon. I believe DROVA Forsaken Kin also ended up getting a port, although maybe the idea from the very beginning was already to release it on mobile too. This is what I would call a brutal RPG. Seriously difficult, it's the kind of game that does not hold your hand at all. You can genuinely ruin your character if you don't play carefully. The game takes place in a world heavily inspired by Celtic mythology, where you start as basically nobody. You need to grow stronger and earn everything through your own effort. Both monsters and NPCs can become your enemies, and the game doesn't even force you into a traditional story path. You can become a villain, or maybe even a hero. It didn't become a huge success on Steam, and unfortunately it's also not getting that much attention on Android either, which is honestly a shame. Beholder Conductor is part of the really famous Beholder series, which already has like 3 or 4 games, and this one is the newest version. The game still keeps that idea of you being some kind of officer inside a cruel dictatorship, where you need to decide if you're going to fully follow the regime or try to act with a bit more compassion toward the oppressed citizens living under it. But this time, unlike the previous games, you're an inspector on a constantly moving train, so you need to investigate passengers, figure out who might be a spy, and of course one of the best parts is deciding what kind of person your character is going to become. And that's exactly why this game is so good, even though it looks really simple at first glance. When you first start playing BELOOW Pit, you honestly don't understand much about it, but after a while you just get completely addicted. When I first saw BELOOW Pit being released, I really didn't know what to expect, but the moment I started playing, I immediately noticed it was a super addictive roguelike. And not only that, the game also manages to include a really cool city building system. Honestly, I don't even know which part is more interesting. Building up your farm and town feels really satisfying, while the roguelike gameplay keeps making you want to play non-stop. It's been a long time since I played a game this addictive in this style, and honestly, I never want to stop playing it.
Crazy. I mean, it deals a good amount of well, I can't even talk. It deals a good amount of damage.
ANNULUS also launched for Android alongside PC, and this game is pretty heavy, but it's absolutely worth it if you enjoy tactical RPGs. Honestly, I feel like this game fits Android even better than PC because of the way it plays. The tactical RPG mechanics are really good, and the game still includes features like gacha with multiple characters for you to unlock. But what really caught my attention, at least for me, is the graphical quality of this game, and also the fact that there's basically no autoplay forcing you through the entire experience. And whether it's the story mode or even some of the online modes the game has, you actually get to play the game yourself. I'm not really into horror games, but honestly this game completely got me hooked. Let's talk about Among the Sleep. This is a horror game where everything happens through the eyes of a baby after his mother puts him to sleep, and the cool part is that you're actually playing as a baby. For example, crawling is way faster than walking normally because, well, a baby doesn't really know how to walk yet. Another interesting thing is that you never really know if all of this is happening inside the baby's mind or if he's actually traveling to another dimension. You have a teddy bear that talks to you and you need to escape from all the evil constantly chasing you. And those were some of the best ports and new games recently arriving on Android. Honestly, mobile gaming keeps getting more insane every single year. See you in the next video.